What is going on, guys? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. I hope you're having a good evening, a good morning, or at whatever time you decide to watch this podcast or listen to this podcast. I hope you're doing fantastic. Today, I got Purdeep Sangha on to tell us a little bit more about what it's like to be a complete man, about his story, his book, and all the things that basically lead to being a good, successful dude. Purdeep, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, thanks. I'm doing awesome. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing good. Still got to go work for about 12 hours today. So, I'm not looking forward to that part, but hopefully I can take enough wisdom, into how to go into my day a little bit better. But first and foremost, man, tell us about you and what got you started in entrepreneurship and then later on to really going down the road of what a complete man looks like.
Wow, yeah, that's a loaded question. So you gotta bear with me here. So, basically, it just started with my parents. I guess that's kind of the impetus. They were immigrants from India, and they just knew how to work hard. And prior to us hitting the record button, I was talking to you about how I grew up in Kelowna, British Columbia, and
Yep.
I literally grew up on an orchard. Like that's my earliest memory was actually growing up on an orchard, and I saw my parents struggle, being immigrants, not having formal education, and just having to work hard and sacrifice and be paid minimum wage. Then they eventually bought their own business, and they actually did pretty good. And that, from a business perspective, really got me interested in terms of, well, if two people in the same business industry are having different results, well, why is that? So why would my parents be doing well, but someone down the street wouldn't be doing well? And it had a lot to do with the principle. So I started to study kind of how they behaved and how they operated the business. And then also along with that, I also saw my dad. My dad was a family man through and throughout. Like he was a guy that was there for us. He would do anything for my brother and I. Um, I can't say there was a moment that he wouldn't have been there, but he also had his own challenges. He had struggled with alcoholism, had his own demons that he was challenged with. I'm sure there was times when he was going through depression, but we really never could tell. His
Mhm.
way out was really drinking. And he was a big dude. Like he was a physically big dude. And when he drank too much, it was scary. And to the point where it was just like, I would just pray to God that he would drink and go to sleep. Because if
Jeez.
he just was in a bad mood or someone triggered him, never with my brother or I, it was typically someone in uh, one of his in-laws or something that would, trigger him, and he would just go off, and it was like a bomb went off in the house. And I grew up that way, and I grew up trying to study his behavior. Like, why would he drink so much? What led him to drinking so much? Are there some precursors to him drinking, to the point where I was able to determine with pretty good accuracy whether he was going to drink that evening or not.
Hmm.
And so, or when he actually had a drink, and no one else could tell, but I could tell just by his facial expressions, or just his demeanor, his language. And so that kind of led me to where I am today. Fast forward, I was a student of business, student of entrepreneurism, as well as neuroscience and neuropsychology, why people behave the way they do, as well as human potential. Like, how do we live to our full potential as human beings? Not only from a performance perspective, but also from a fulfillment perspective, because there's no point in performing. Like we talked about, an athlete, for example, no point in being the best athlete if you're going to go home and be miserable.
Yeah.
So the same goes with being an entrepreneur. And so I kind of brought that together in the work that we do here today, which is working with businessmen and careermen, helping them be successful in their business, but also in their personal lives, which means how to be a successful husband, how to be a successful father, and how to be a fulfilled person as a man. Because, man, it's tough being a man these days from the perspective of there's so much confusion in terms of what it means to be a man. Am I being too masculine, not masculine enough? Am I supposed to say, hey, I'm a he, or do I stay neutral? All these kinds of things that people are being bombarded by. And then on top of that, uh, we as men have this own internal pressure of providing and being the
Mm.
protectors, and not having an outlet for that, where we can share some of our challenges with other people without feeling like we're less of a man for doing so. So we've created a safe environment, hence why we have the complete man, why we have masterminds, where we have groups for men, very productive and performance oriented groups. right? It's not
Yeah.
just about sitting around sharing the feelings. It's about, okay, what kind of life do we want to have? How do we achieve that life? What kind of marriage do we want to have? How do we achieve it? Success in business. There's nothing wrong with being successful, making a lot of money, but if you're going to sacrifice your family and your own personal happiness as a result, you might want to rethink that. So that's essentially what we do is we help men be successful on all fronts and have the life that they want.
Excellent, man. Because like I was saying, telling you before, it's one of those things that we dance around. It's one of those subjects that we talk about behind closed doors with maybe one or two people, if that. And a lot of us guys, we just say, you know what, it's better off if I just put this one in the closet with some skeletons and I just forget about it and pretend that it doesn't exist. But then when I get smashed, I'm gonna go beat somebody up and go off. And I've seen that same behavior in my friends too, people that I know where it's like, yeah, it's almost like you use the alcohol as an excuse, or it's almost like a self-soothing mechanism, but it never works in the long run because at the end of the day, the price you pay is your life because your liver's gone. You become diabetic. Like there's all kinds of different issues that can arise from that. How do you deal with guys that come to you? They say, hey, you know what? I'm super successful, but this area of my life is just lacking. Like, let's say a guy's super successful, got all the money in the world, but he's got no time. How do you go about kind of reframing this man's mindset into like, okay, this is what you need to do. These are the first actionable steps that you should probably take.
Yeah, well, the big thing is trying to uncover, first of all, what kind of life they want to have. Because a lot of guys in that particular state have created this life based on what they think people want them to be. So, for example, a lot of people in that position will have a family that they're providing a great lifestyle for. So they feel like they have to continue to create that amount of money to provide that lifestyle. Or there's a status element to it as well. Like if I make this much money, it means that
Mhm.
I'm actually worth this much as an individual.
Yeah.
And we tie our identity to our status, typically our career status or our financial status. So one of the first exercises that we do is we get men, we have to peel back the layers of the onion, right? We got to pull back all the social pressures and be like, okay, if knowing that you are a husband, but you didn't have the pressures of providing, knowing that you're a father, but not the pressures of providing, or your parents or other people saying that you should have this kind of lifestyle or be this type of man, how do you want to live? What kind of life do you want to have? What do you want to spend your days doing? And we get the guys to actually go away for a weekend if they need to, or at least overnight somewhere outside of their family home, undisturbed, where they can actually have that conversation with themselves and actually create a vision of the life that they want for
Yeah.
themselves. Because that vision then helps identify what kind of lifestyle they need to have, but also the career and the business, and more importantly, the identity. And this is something that is so critical is identifying who we are as men, what kind of traits and characteristics we want to have. Because a lot of these guys, they don't want to be working silly. They don't want to be spending all their time working, but they've just created that identity. It is now a part of them. So they have to separate that. It's
Yeah.
almost like they have to reinvent a part of themselves to be able to do that. And that's a process that we take them through and show them that they actually can. Because one of the belief systems that men have is that I've done this for so long, I don't know if I can do anything different. I can't think differently like this. I've just programmed myself to think this way. So we have to unprogram them in some way.
Yeah. That's I mean, it makes perfect sense because even for myself, it's almost like I gotta work every day and I gotta work my ass off. I gotta do overtime. And if I don't, then I'm less of a dude because what kind of dude doesn't do overtime, man, he's a bitch, and these are the thoughts that kind of go through my mind. Even it's like, bro, if I don't stay and do overtime, or if I don't put in at least an extra 10 hours, who am I as a man? I'm not really going all the way. And it's interesting that you mentioned that you have to sit with yourself, and that's something that's kind of one of those esoteric, philosophies or teachings where people talk about going inward to really discover yourself, right? Which is something we never really do. And even for myself, where it's like I'm always so busy, dude, that like the only still time that I actually get is like, my time on my break, where it's like I can finally be by myself to kind of just think about stuff. And it's crazy because we've had this almost dug into us or something that subconsciously has been just trained or entrenched into us, and we don't even know where it comes from, I feel.
Yeah, yeah, because we're very performance and achievement driven, right? And those are the two parts of the overall formula, and we forget the fulfillment aspect. And there's nothing wrong with being driven, right? There's nothing wrong with working your butt off as long as you know why you're working your butt off. And at some point, you have to be able to pull the eject button or the exit button or the refresh button or whatever it is to really get back into living the life that you want. So you can, what we call sprints,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're going to work your butt off for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, take a month off, right? Just enjoy,
Yeah.
reset yourself. Or what I tend to do is I work hard Monday to Friday. I've actually scaled it back to Monday to Thursday and take
Oh,
the Friday, Saturday, Sundays off with my family. And I work like crazy the 4 days that I have, but I know that there's something there that I'm actually working towards. It's when we continue to do the same patterns for years that it becomes dangerous. It becomes dangerous because we keep fooling ourselves at the end of the point because we keep telling ourselves, I haven't gotten to the point where I want to be, therefore I need to continue to do it. Right. And so guys will
yeah.
literally spend decades with that same pattern because that end point they've never reached it because there's always a new end point. There's always a new goal. And so here's the thing to take a look at is making sure that your life is in harmony. Essentially, that's what it is because it's not always the time,
Yeah.
it's are the different aspects of your life actually positively impacting the other aspects. So, for example, if you're working hard and you're married and you have kids, is it positively impacting your family? If it is,
Wow.
great, right? If you
Yeah.
spending your evenings and weekends working is negatively impacting your family, then it's not necessarily worth it. But it might be worth it for a short period, maybe 6 months, maybe a year.
Yeah.
But if nothing changes, it's not worth it. And a lot of times, again, we will fool ourselves to say it is worth it. But if you ask a wife or a mother or a child of that person, they will say it's not worth it. One of the biggest things that most important things that my dad said to my brother prior to my dad passing away, because my brother was working like crazy. And he said, you know what, son, you're going to live this life once. You're only going to have, a family that you're going to raise at a particular time. They're going to be young only once. If you're going to stress yourself out while you're trying to raise a family, is it really worth it for you? Right? You might
Wow.
miss out on the best years of their life. And my brother actually rethought that and he took it to heart and he changed how he was operating because he was in the grind. So it's not necessarily work life balance. I used to say work life balance, but I say work life harmony now
Wow.
because that each part of your life has to build on the other part, right? Because again, if you're having a crappy marriage, it's going to take away from your energy to work hard in the business or in your career. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, you have to understand that. And this is the concept of the complete man is each part of your life is a battery. That battery has energy. Whether that battery is full or not is a different story. So, is your career battery full? Is your marriage battery full? Is your personal health battery full? Is your parent, as if you're a father, is that battery full? Because if one of those batteries is not full, guess what ends up happening? Each of those other batteries have to work that much harder.
Yeah.
And then they eventually get drained faster. But if all batteries are full, guess what? You are a machine now, right? You
Yeah.
are a machine that you can accomplish some amazing things in your life and you get even more fuel. It's like a compound effect when your batteries are full in all aspects. You actually accomplish more and you actually have more time. So now rather than saying sitting with your family and you're like you feel guilty because you're not working, right? That's what a lot of guys do is
Yeah.
they're not present because they feel like they're missing something out of work. Now you're spending that time to refresh and you're like, I'm getting more energy by spending time with my family. And that's the difference.
That's interesting because I've heard that too, where you were talking about the importance of energy and not so much about being well rested, but about how it's more important to have the proper amount of energy to approach anything or any. The way I kind of saw it is like you got to have the energy to play all the instruments in the symphony, in the symphony that is your life. if
Yep.
you want it to go together and flow together the way that it needs to, it's almost like, yeah, you need that energy for every aspect of your life. And the reason why that really resonates with that, dude, I could be completely exhausted and I could still go to the gym and rip it up for 2 hours and I'm going to feel brand new because that battery is just, it's always packed. It's always good to go. I go to work, I'm just like, dude, I'm already half drained just showing up. It's like I'm just on autopilot. I go through the motions. I'm like, here we go again. But I could do it for 12 hours, but I hate it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you brought up too, which I kind of made me think, where my son's like, oh, why you work so much? I'm like, bro, because we need to eat.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, though, the older he gets, the more it makes me more conscious about I don't want to necessarily spend all my time working, working, working. I got to design something different, right? However, I got to make the sacrifice right now in order for me to get to where I need to. But it's like you say, I don't want that finish to always be steps ahead of me. I got to reach it eventually and then cross that line, then make peace with the fact that I don't got to work 60 hours a week, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you got that, because yeah, like you said, you got a son, and our kids learn from us, and they'll learn the same patterns that we
Yeah.
teach them. And unless they, at some point, they have a reckoning, or they have some kind of awakening where they say, or some instance in their life where they're like, they have to do something different, but they pick
Mhm.
up on their patterns. That's why I'm so conscious as a father in terms of everything I do. Not too conscious where I'm paranoid, but I'm always like, okay, if I respond this way, what's the long-term impact on my
Yeah.
son? One of the things that I try to teach my son the skills that he needs to be successful in life. And I try not to instill my, I'm going to say, views on everything on him. I just want him to know the core things about life that are going to make him successful and choose his own path. And if he chooses something similar to me, great. If he doesn't, great. But there's some important things that he does need to learn. But going back to energy, it's so important, because energy leads to two things: better performance and better outcomes, and more passion and more fulfillment in life.
100%.
Doesn't matter if you can have all the money in the world, a great house, whatever it is, but if you don't have the energy to enjoy it, it feels like it's not worth anything. And I know for sure, because I work with guys that are in that position where they have all the money, but they just feel like something's missing. And that's an even worse position to be in, because
Yeah.
now they're at the point where money can't buy them happiness.
Yeah.
It's something that it can't be bought at a certain level.
Well, it's just a concept. I mean, I wish I was at that spot, so I could just be like, oh yeah, I'm good to go. I could spend all the time with my family, right? But
Yep.
it's interesting because I've heard that before where it's like, yeah, money can't buy you happiness, but the whole purpose of money isn't really to buy you happiness. Happiness is an emotion that comes from within. And that part I've always got. And for myself, like honestly, like I think I was like 2021 where I decided to travel, spend time by myself. And I was by myself for about 2 years.
Mm.
And I found it very fulfilling. I just did whatever I wanted. And I found that I could be happy without like a dime, dude. There were times where I'm like, I got no money in my account, but you know what? I'm just chilling at the beach and I'm having a great time. And it kind of, I guess it was not bad, but it rewired me to say, hey, I don't necessarily need this tool to help me out. And then you become a father, and all of a sudden it's like, bro, you got to provide. You can't just walk around here like a hippie anymore. So I was like, oh, shit, what do I do? I got to work my ass off. And it's almost like you got to line up your P's and Q's appropriately. I mean, for myself now, it's like, okay, it's good. I got that happiness factor, but now it's almost like, damn, I wish I had learned this part of the equation when I was younger too. So the other thing, or a concept or something I want to go over with you is if you're talking to an 18-year-old kid, 20-year-old boy, let's say he's got no father, and you want to tell him, hey, this is what a complete man looks like. This is what a complete man, the archetype of what a complete man is. What would it be and how would it look from your eyes, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think if I take a look at someone, and this is why I think what you were talking about, everybody's path has a purpose. And the path that you had, you learned how to be happier. And let's just say your financial path is your second stage, right? Or your latter stage.
Mm.
But I'd rather choose a happier path, and learn that early on. That's why choose to teach my kids how to be emotionally set, how to be emotionally happy, how to look for fulfillment in the smallest things. That is my number one purpose,
Mhm.
or teaching for them as children, because they can learn how to be successful after. They can learn how to make money after. It's harder to learn how to be happier after, because you've built your ways and you've set your patterns emotionally and neurologically in your brain. So for an 18-year-old, I would say learn how to be happy with yourself, because a complete man is someone that is not necessarily, let's just say, the perfect person, right? It is someone that is continuously learning, but someone who is, you can say, content with who they are at this particular time, but is always striving to learn and be better. That
Wow.
is the complete man.
I love that. I love that. I mean, one of the pillars of masculinity that I kind of live by is progress. And I think, you know what, if you're not progressing, regardless of what it is in life, like me, I've always been into bodybuilding, right? And bodybuilding is always about progressing, you know, whether it's bigger muscles, getting more shredded, building a certain part of the body. It's always about progression. However, that translates into everything else in life. And then I started reading more about the subject, and you nailed it on the head, man. It's almost like if you're not progressing, you just feel like you're not going anywhere. And there's no worse feeling for me, regardless of what it is in life, where it's just like I'm just stuck in the mud, just spinning my wheels.
Yeah,
you know?
it's important, because drive and motivation is a core aspect of us as men specifically. It's there for women as well, but men are very goal driven, task oriented. Like we need a task to tackle, right? That's what we're
Mhm.
built for, whether that's weight training, whether that's career, whatever it is. But that's something that we take on. So this is why we talk about, I call it the formula of the P's, which is you got to have the passion, right? There's got to be some kind of passion that drives you. You got to have a purpose, because passion is internal, right? You're looking internally, but purpose is typically external, which is doing
Mhm.
something for others. That's typically what a purpose has. So now you have the balance of doing something for yourself, passion. Now you have the balance of doing something for others, your purpose. But then you add on your power, and your power is an element of something that you are really good at. Something, because when you do something that you're good at, you feel powerful. If you're doing things that you
Yeah.
suck at, well, you're not going to feel powerful at all, right? You're not going to feel inspired. And then the next
No.
P is progress, the growth, making progress, even if it's something that is minute or small, or just lifting an extra couple of pounds or an extra rep or whatever it is, that makes you feel like you're actually doing something, and that keeps you inspired. So again, a lot of guys end up burning out or feeling down on themselves because they don't feel like they're making the progress that they should be making. Well, I'm at this age, I should have made this much money by now, or I should have been at
Mhm.
this level by now. But that's not necessarily it. Everybody's path is different. If you compare your path to everybody else's, guess what? You're going to be miserable forever. You got to compare your path to your own and
Yeah.
understand that you are progressing. And when you take life like that, not only do you make bigger strides and better progress, but you're actually fulfilled along the way, because
Yeah.
most people are not fulfilled because they compare themselves to someone else's path. That's where it gets challenging.
No, and it makes perfect sense because it's obviously, you know, you look at somebody else's journey, and you're like, "Oh, he got it easy." But the other thing too that nobody ever understands or nobody ever really looks at is what that dude had to go through to get to where he's at currently. So it's almost like we all see the success, we see the glitz, glamour, whatever, but we have no idea what he went through as an entrepreneur, how many businesses he failed. And you talk to the person, you're like, "Oh wow, you know, that sounds like the kind of journey I don't want to go on."
Yeah.
And it gives you perspective into like what his life was like in order to get to where he had to get to. And he may look at what you had to go through in order to develop whatever skills or whatever makes you feel powerful. And he's like, dude, I don't want that, you know? And it kind of goes into how we're all different. However, it's almost like we are going to continue progressing in this life, or, you know, you fall into default land, which is a place I don't want to go.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure that, you know, if you're progressing, you're moving forward, you are going to reach whatever destination it is that you do set for yourself. Which kind of brings me into what I want to talk to you about. If I'm a dude who's in a rut and I want to, you know, progress into that next level, Would I just apply the 3 Ps? How do I go about setting targets with you? How do you work around these guys? How do you coach them to say, hey, you want to fix area of your life? How do we, this is how we go about it. What are some of the strategies that you employ?
Wow, yeah. So if I take a look at the core aspects, we actually have a formula. The first thing is we got to figure out, okay, what's the motivation? What's the drive? That's what we call inspiration, right? That's where we tackle, because if you have inspiration, that means you got the drive to actually do something. Because a lot
Mhm,
of guys want something, but they don't have the drive to do it. And that's not necessarily that we can't help them get the drive, because if we help them establish the clarity, then they'll have more drive. A lot of guys don't have clarity. So the first thing is we find clarity, because that will help them with the drive. What do they want? What kind of life do they want to live? Right? What are they willing to do, and what are they willing not to do to be able to get there?
mhm,
Then we focus on the skill gap, right? And that skill gap um, is could be as simple as, maybe you need to get better at sales. Maybe you need to get better at your relationship. Maybe you need to be a better husband, or a better father. Maybe there's some aspect, there's a skill there, right? And life, people think there's natural talent. Yes, there is natural talent. Like in bodybuilding, some people have better genetics than other people,
mhm,
but a lot of it is skill. A lot of it is the training, right? There's certain tactics and techniques, if you're not genetically gifted, that you can still use to make progress. So advancing your
mhm,
skill is important, and understanding what that skill gap is something that we help them identify. Then we take a look at, okay, how are you executing? And executing has things to do with, okay, what's your strategy? Because you might
mhm.
be inspired and have all the motivation, but if you're just using the wrong strategy, well, it's you're going to be going fast, but not in the direction that you want. So we identify what that strategy is. And in that strategy, we plan, but we also identify some core aspects, such as the most powerful thing is, what is your daily routine like? What are your habits like? Because those habits, what you do on a daily basis, compound. Fundamentally, that's what leads you to your goal. It's not necessarily these big overnight magic moments. It's what you do on a daily basis, right? As you know, you train with weights, right? You don't build muscle overnight. It's years of painstaking effort of
Mhm.
building it slowly over time, and then you build that lean muscle mass that stays with you,
Yeah.
and is healthier. So that execution strategy is important. We also teach you how to have more energy in your execution, because again, if you're have the right strategy but you don't have enough energy, like, and we're talking about physical energy, we're talking about mental energy, we're talking about emotional energy. Like, how do you manage your emotions effectively? So here's a simple practical exercise: is every hour we get guys to set their timer on their watch or their phone, do an emotional check, which is, how am I feeling right now? Is this in alignment with how I want to feel? If
Interesting.
it is, great, continue to do more of it. If it's not, then you have to take a look. Maybe I need to change my state. Maybe I need to change my perspective, or maybe I need to do something different to break me out of this emotional state right now. It could be physical exercise, could be mindfulness practice. Maybe it's stop doing what you're doing right now,
Mhm.
but be in that emotional state. Because if you're consistently in that emotional state, you're going to have more energy, you're going to have more drive, you're going to execute, perform better, you're going to be making better progress. But more importantly, you're going to be living a more fulfilled life,
Yes.
because life is all about, at the core essence, is about how we feel, right?
100%. Yeah.
And so if we're working hard, but we're not feeling great doing it, there's no point, right? It makes no point. There's no point in struggling for 70 years of your life without feeling good about it. Like, makes no sense. Um, and then we also teach guys, one of the things, core things that guys need to understand to be successful, is how to be creative and how to solve problems. Because you'll always, creativity is about finding opportunities. It's about creating opportunities, seeing things that other people are not seeing, or seeing things that you don't see, because a lot of solutions are right in front of our faces. We just don't see them because we're caught up in the daily grind, doing the same thing
Yeah.
over and over again. And then there's the other aspect of solving problems, which means that we all have problems, but how do we solve them more effectively? How do we solve them faster, and how do we solve them better? And how do we learn from them? That's really uh, a fundamental aspect. And then the last element that we work with guys on, I know we're going over a lot, but I'm just going over the overall process,
Yeah.
is is how do you sustain that level of performance? So happens all the time with guys. They're going 100 miles an hour and making a ton of money. They got the fancy wives, or wife, or they got the kids, they got the big house. Bam, they just hit a brick wall because they're burnt out and
Dang.
they can no longer sustain that performance. They can't sustain that life because it wasn't balanced or wasn't harmonious with each other. Basically, you've hit all the gas, you've drained all the batteries because you weren't paying attention to something. So we create or help them create a sustainable level of performance and achievement, meaning that we never let any of your batteries really deplete to the level where that battery is never going to recover again. Right. So if
Mhm.
we know, for example, you're not getting good sleep, we got to correct that fast.
Yep.
Because if you're not sleeping properly, you're going to burn out fast. Like it's scientifically proven, right? We got the studies for it. We got the expertise on our team to show you what that does. Um, and it's going to impact you. And you're not going to be making proper decisions if you don't sleep effectively, or if you don't have the right support network on you around you. You're going to feel like you're alone, or you're battling negative energy, or whatever that might be. Like these are the kind of elements. So we create an environment so you can actually sustain that performance over the long term. So it's no longer just a short sprint, it's a continuous, you could say kind of a marathon approach where you're
Mhm.
cruising along at a good pace, you're making the progress you want, you're enjoying it. Yeah, you're able to chit chat, you're able to have fun at the same time, and you're not feeling burnt out, right? You're feeling like, when you're doing those reps and
Yeah.
and you hit that wall, but you just keep going, and after a while it's like you're not even feeling like it's like you're not even burning any energy. It's like you just keep
Mhm.
going, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And your body is just doing it on its own, and it's like a rhythm, it's a momentum, but it's
Yeah.
not like you're dying. It's like something that you actually feel good doing, right? And you're able to continue to do that.
Yeah, man. Honestly, what I kind of gather from your entire system, it's almost like you're creating flow state, but a sustained flow state that's continuous and consistent, which a lot of people like. And that's what I was talking to my wife about this too. It's kind of like that whole, you know what, sometimes you got to become unbalanced to reach balance, right? Goggins was talking about that. And I was like, yeah, it's an interesting concept. However, in the long term, it's not really feasible. Like, it's not possible to maintain that. But the system that you've laid out, and believe you me, I got to cut this one out, make it short because I'm going to go over this one a lot. But the way that I kind of gathered from this, it's almost like we are creating a flow state. It's like, and you hit every single subject that you need to on the head, man. Where it's like, yeah, you got to take care of the mind, you got to take care of the body, you got to take care of your work, your performance. Everything was taken care of in the system that you went over, which is why I think it probably works pretty damn well because you're basically creating a harmonious state where everything's working in flow. And I think that's, man, that's deep, man. Like I said, I got to go over this part probably over and over again. But it's, dude, man, yeah, that's makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you know what? I'm amazed. So I have to congratulate you, and you're on top of your game because you're the first person who, without us having previous conversations, has actually been able to pick up on that, because that is fundamentally it. We've created a system, and we actually have studied flow. We call it the complete zone,
Hmm.
um, from a macro level and a micro level, to be able to. We systemized it because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's what it's about. There's a lot of people that I see go through programs, coaching programs or online programs, or they go to seminars, events, they get pumped up and they're not able to sustain it
Hmm.
because they don't have a system. And ultimately what we saw was, okay, if we can create the system, then people can continue to do this. And that's
Yes.
essentially what we've done, is we've systemized it. So not only can people sustain it, but now when someone comes to us, we can, it's like a diagnostic check.
Yeah.
We can say, okay, how are you doing here? How are you doing here? And we can say, okay, this part is off. Here are the elements that we need to work on. Or, maybe it's your energy, or maybe you're just not inspired, or maybe you're just burning out. So we now have a diagnostic system to say, okay, what do we need to work on? What do you need to work on and focus on? So once we tune those up and get those back to working again, man, you're going to be going at I don't want to say speed, but you will be going at a certain speed, and you're going to be cruising along and having fun and enjoying your life.
Well, yeah, dude, because it's so much fun. Well, fun is not a word, but whatever. It's so much more fun to like when you're doing something that's actually valuable or of value to you that you enjoy, and it's obviously, feeding into every other aspect of your life in a positive way. It's almost like when you get rid of that bad apple, all of a sudden everything else starts to flourish, right? And that's why this system really makes a lot of sense to me, where I'm like, even for myself, it's got the wheels turning in my head. Like, damn, there's certain things that I definitely got to look at in my life and, fix that too. And it just seems like it's a system that's been properly thought out. And you're right, dude. Like when I'm at the gym and like, let's say you get past those failure sets, where you're already technically supposed to be burnt out, but you feel that power, right? Like you mentioned before, when you feel powerful in whatever it is that you're doing, you'll go that extra mile, but you won't feel burnt out. You drop this energy that you can't really explain. And you're just like, no, I'll just keep going. It's almost like, when you're in flow state, right, where it's like, okay, you know what, I'll go for another day doing this just because I enjoy what I'm doing. Or you might not even enjoy that grind side of it, but it's almost like it's so fulfilling that that feels good.
Mhm.
And it's almost like you covered it perfectly, man, because it makes perfect sense. And even for like layman like me, I can gather, I can make sense of this. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you got it down. You got it down pretty good, man. I'm impressed.
Thanks, man. I just tie it all back into the gym. It's been my metaphor for life. I'm like, okay, if I go hard, I can.
Well, the gym is such an amazing, it is an amazing teacher. Um, if we take a look at some of the most successful people, whether it's The Rock or Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, I'm a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, Ronnie Coleman, like all these guys, right? They had the fortitude to do it in the gym, and they systemized it too, right?
Yeah.
They had their systems. They knew what to do. They knew what tweaks they had to make, and it's a huge teacher. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a great
Well,
analogy for life.
I think, yeah, because the biggest thing about the gym that it taught me, man, was like, you have to stand in front of the mirror and look at all your defects, and it's kind of like shit. I don't know what other subject or what other, sport you can get into where it's like you stand there, you're like, okay, I need to work on that. That's wrong. You got to be honest, man. You can't really escape it either because like your body of work is literally right in front of you. And it's a
Yeah.
physical manifestation of whether you're eating too much, not eating enough. Like it's all the perfect feedback. But going back to your system, I think it ties in perfectly because it's kind of like, dude, you want to talk about feedback. If you're not feeling fulfilled in what you're doing for 10 hours a day, you're going to feel that eventually,
Mhm.
and then whether it's alcoholism or going back to depression, all that kind of stuff, it always goes back to like, what are you doing on a daily basis? If you keep grinding, you're going to grind yourself out.
Yep.
Which kind of brings me to another thing that I heard you talk about, mention on some other podcasts, but the mindfulness aspect, the meditation kind of aspect. Could you touch on basically what kind of meditations do you recommend? Is it transcendental? Is it Zen? Is it just breath work? How is it that you go about it?
Yeah. So simply put, I kind of separate mindfulness and meditation. So to me, mindfulness can be, it's a state of awareness, where meditation can be a state of awareness or a state of, like, I don't know where I'm at. I'm out in Zen world. I don't know what's going on. I might be in a different universe, whatever it is. So mindfulness is about attention and awareness and breath work. If I was to say, what's the simplest thing that you can do to impact your state, impact your quality of life, it's breath work.
Mhm.
And that could be deep breathing. It could be 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. It could be a double breath in, for example, long exhalation, which has been shown to help. I recommend everybody to take a look at Iceman Hoff, for example, right?
Yeah, Wim Hof.
Iceman, yeah, he's got some great techniques, and it's ultimately about breathing in your state. But there's something beyond that for me. This is a journey that I started when I was younger. Is something that I learned was meditating, and I used to meditate for long periods, hours as a kid, and even do walking meditations. It's something that just happened, I would say. And
Yeah.
plus, and part of me from a spiritual perspective, because my grandfather was a very spiritual person. My great grandfather was a spiritual teacher in India for almost 6 decades. So I believe it's in our lineage.
Yeah.
My dad was somewhat of a spiritual man outside of, struggling with alcoholism. He was very much well tuned with some of the other things. from an Eastern practice perspective.
Mhm.
And I learned that at a young age. And to this day, it is one of the most important practices that I do, if not the most important practice, because every moment of wisdom or creativity that I get, a lot of it comes from throughout meditation or right after meditation. Um, the most blissful moments of my life have been in meditation as well. I sometimes, and I always caution people on this, because there's people that out there meditate for the sake of meditating because they want to get away from their life.
Mhm.
And that's not what meditation is really meant for. Um, but there's times and periods where you can use meditation to revive yourself, to recalibrate yourself. There's a big part. I always recommend visualization. If someone is going to meditate or do a mindfulness practice, I incorporate in two important things: breathing, but also visualization. If
Yeah.
I take a look at some of the best things that I've accomplished in my life, whether that was I used to weight train heavy when I was younger, and I could lift more than guys my weight, like 50 pounds on me, not because anything special, but because I knew how to visualize, how
Mhm.
to accomplish it. Um, Guys, if we take visualization, not only is there a neurological aspect, it actually trains the brain and your motor neurons, but it also there's a spiritual aspect to it as well. That you're telling the universe, and for the guys out there, be like, this is fluff or whatever it is. Everybody has their own belief, but I'm a very scientific person, very scientific.
Mhm.
We have a whole entire research team, but I'm very much spiritual, because now that we're seeing science and spirituality intersect, science is now showing, get this, the number one factor for relieving stress and for performance, for high stress, high performing jobs. We're talking about high risk jobs such as military, Navy SEALs, sports athletes, whatever it is mindfulness practices.
Bam.
Like the science has now shown that you do mindfulness and meditation practices, you're going to perform at a better level. You're going to have a higher quality of life. You're going to be able to learn faster, be more creative. Like these are some pretty amazing studies that have shown this. So I'm a huge, huge advocate of mindfulness and meditation. And so I could talk about this forever, but for guys out there, a lot of guys say one of the biggest complaints is they can't sit still. And that is the very reason why you need to practice, because just like going to the gym, you're not going to go in and bench press 300 pounds right away. You're going to freaking
Mhm.
tear a tendon or something, ligament, right? You have to ease yourself into it. But once you get a groove, then it's a continuous progress. I always tell people to start with a few minutes, a couple of minutes. Um, Here's the other complaint I get, because I want to squash these complaints, because I want people to get past these complaints. I want them to know that they're normal. If your mind is racing, it's normal. We're being trained like that. We have these
Mhm.
cell phones, right, that are teaching us to be not mindful. And,
Yep.
and so we have to combat that. So it's okay to have racing thoughts. It's okay to not be able to sit still. Remember, you are in control of your mind. You have to be.
Mhm.
Here's an analogy from the Buddhist teachings. Your mind is like an elephant, but you are the master on top of the elephant, right? That elephant has a lot of power, and you just got to learn how to train it. And once
Yep.
you learn how to train it, then you become masterful. You become extremely powerful. So give your mind some time. Take some time, maybe a couple of minutes at first. Practice some mindfulness or meditation. Gradually increase it over time. And once you have that experience, I'm telling you, once you experience whether it's bliss or you feel of content and peace or more energy or awareness or whatever it is, you're going to be hooked, because you're going to be like, I experienced something I've never experienced before, and you'll continuously do it. The other complaint that we get, again, I just want to quickly squash this, is I've tried this for such a long time and I can't do it. I can't do it. Here's why. There's no such thing as a point improvement. And I'm going to use an analogy of weight training. I used to get this all the time. Is, well, how do I reduce the fat in this one particular area? I'm like, you got to reduce the fat in all your areas. Sorry,
Bam. Mhm.
right? It's not just one thing. And the same thing happens with your life and mindfulness. if you are not mindful in the rest of your life throughout the day, and your mind is continuously racing and you're on your smartphone all the time and you're trying to multitask, well, good luck trying to calm your brain down in a mindfulness practice. But if you
Yeah.
are mindful throughout the day and say, okay, maybe I don't need to check my phone every 2 seconds. Maybe I can just not multitask. If you slow the rest of your life down a little bit, you're going to be a lot more progressive in your mindfulness and meditation practices.
100%, man. And you're right, because you get hooked real quick. And that's, I mean, for myself, like I've always been into the whole physical development. And obviously, you know what, you start reading and you start going into like the what people would refer to as woo-woo, but it's like, hey man, you can't call it woo-woo when there's science behind it. And you look at how neurons that wire together fire together and all this, all these different scientific observations that have been made and have proven what we've always kind of thought about it, right? It's kind of like, oh wow, you know what? You can heal neural pathways in the brain through meditation. Who would have thought? And all these different things, but it's almost like just like, ah man, I remember there's this one I think it was a Buddhist monk. They brought him in, he meditated. They're like, either this is the happiest man on earth, or he knows something about how to go within himself that we just haven't figured out. They had like the EEG scans, they had everything on this man trying to figure him out. And he's just like, listen, you just got to go within, meditate, slow down. And that's kind of what got me hooked. Was the first time, I was doing a guided meditation, but man, it's the euphoric feeling that I came out of where I'm like, I don't know what that was. Or, it's almost like you feel almost not high, but you feel elated in a way. And all of a sudden it makes your day that much easier. It calms you down. And it's almost like the monkey mind that I know you probably know about too, right? Where it's you calm that down and you're
Yep.
able to think more clearly. You're able to go about your day in a better way. And it's something that some people will say like, oh, you shouldn't meditate because of XYZ, or I can't sit still. I'm like, if you can't sit still, then find a way to sit still. Force your bodies to sit still.
Mhm.
And it's like you said, it's like, yo, are you gonna let the elephant like control you forever? Or are you gonna sit down and be like, all right, here's where I put my foot down.
Yeah.
And this is where I gotta sit down and I just gotta relax, just breathe in and breathe out. And all of a sudden you do it more and more, and it's like a muscle. You just develop that, right? The brain is like a muscle, but the brain is far more powerful. But it's the mind ultimately that controls the brain, which tells the body what to do. And it's almost like when you are able to harness that, man, that's when I think great things are going to happen. I think more and more guys, need to implement this into their lives. And it's not about woo woo. It's not about any of that, man. Just like try it. My biggest thing is like people are going to hate without ever actually trying something. I'm like, go give it a shot, but give it a shot for at least 2 months. Have a plan, a regimented plan, follow it, and then tell me how you feel. And you know what? If it doesn't work for you, I highly doubt that, but
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a stereotype, because there's a stereotype of people just sitting and doing nothing in meditation. There's different forms of meditation, as I mentioned before. Walking meditation, walking mindfulness practices. Actually, one of the most effective is walking mindfulness.
Mhm.
We're just being conscious of your environment, shutting everything off, just looking at nature. All these, there's so many different techniques, like you said, transcendental, guided. Is there so many different ways? It's not just one pathway. Find what works for you.
Yeah, dude. And the thing is, with so many different options out there, with so many different guided meditations, there really aren't. The excuses aren't valid anymore. It's almost like the people that say, I can't work out because I got no time. I'm like, well, really? I mean, how much time do you spend on your phone? Like, pull out your phone. Let me see how much time. Oh, 4 hours a day. Wow, you got time, bro. Like we all have time. We all have time. But the thing is, everything that exists in this world, I really feel is fighting for our attention, right?
Mm,
So like, I just got TikTok so I can, upload stuff there too, which I don't really go on the TikTok too much. But man, I remember the first time I went on there, I was addicted, dude. I was like, holy cow, and I was there for half an hour. It turns out they got psychologists that basically say, okay, this is the way we go about it to make sure that this guy stays hooked and
yeah.
everybody else and their dog. And that's the way social media, that's the way advertisement, everything around us is meant to stimulate us in a way where we stay hooked on their platforms, right? And now meditation is almost like taking a step back and just going within yourself and finding peace within, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You nailed it. Bang on.
But man, tell us more about your coaching before we head out. Tell us about what you do, how people can reach you, and just more about the good stuff that you offer, Purdue.
Yeah, well, I think the simplest way is if someone is interested in terms of knowing more, you can always pick up the book, The Complete Man. It's the simplest way to do it. You'll read some of the concepts, and we go a little bit deeper into it in the book. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's typically where I'm most active, or reach out to my team at it's team@purdeepsangha.com. But we are here. Ultimately, my mission is to work with men. Like that. That's it. Day in and day out, this is what we do: is work with men who are family oriented. Typically, that's what our clients typically are, because we help them in the different aspects of men. That doesn't mean you have to have children, but at least be married,
Yeah.
and maybe want a family at some particular time. So we have masterminds, we have coaching programs, I have one-to-one private coaching as well. And so we're ultimately here to help men. And so we encourage men to reach out, share stories. Um, but more importantly, the one thing that I would ask the listeners is to seek, whether it's through us or anybody else, if you're having a challenging time, or you want to do something, or be better in some ways, to reach out to a mentor,
Hmm.
someone, and I'm not talking about influencers or anything like that, just someone in your everyday life that has some wisdom. Because my life, I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have had some great mentors in my life, just everyday people like my grandfather, who just taught me specific things in life that have helped me overcome challenges and have principles and values. And the second thing is to mentor somebody else, is to help someone else. I think that's something, it's a lost art that we're not doing a good job in, because if I see a lot of the challenges that we talk about for mental health in men, it's
Yeah.
because they feel like they're alone. There's no one there to mentor them. And this is something that I think is so valuable. Um, Someone told me a story once. This gentleman is extremely successful now, and he was once homeless when he was younger. I think in his early 20s as a young man.
Wow.
And he said something that just totally blew me away, changed my perspective. I had no clue about this, because I thought I was a good person. When I'd see homeless people, I'd buy them food, I would buy them, give them money. I taught my
Hmm.
kids how to do that. And he said, the biggest challenge of being a homeless person, the thing that hurt the most, that caused him to be more down and out than ever, wasn't that he had no money or no food or shelter, is that he felt invisible. He felt
Wow.
like no one could see him, like he didn't matter. And that just totally changed my perspective, because even thinking about it right now, I get these chills, because it's like, yeah, how many times have I given money to somebody thinking that I was being a good person without actually connecting with them at a human level?
Yeah.
Because that is the simplest thing that we can do. And we talk, again, mental health and challenges and suicide. Men, I learned this from my father. If this is the last point I can make,
Hmm.
one of the things that I learned after my father passed away was that us as men, we need affection just as much as women do. We need physical touch, we need love, we need compassion from other people around us just as much as women. We are no different. If we live a life without affection, that will lead to mental health challenges, that will lead to suicide. But if we get enough affection in our life, enough love and guidance and mentorship, that's going to help combat us, and it's going to give us a more fulfilling life. That's what life is about. It's about love, connection, fulfillment, affection. So I encourage, just us as men, just be aware. Maybe some guy in your social circle maybe just needs you to put your hands on his shoulder and be like, buddy, bro, it's okay. Or just give him a hug. A simple thing like that can make a huge difference.
Wow. You're you're 100% right about that, man. It's kind of, well, I mean, for me, honestly, dude, I'm a constant bubble violator, so I got no problem with that. Other guy
Awesome.
that gives you a long, big ass handshake, and I hug my homies, man. No big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it's kind of like that warm embrace, and you're right, dude. It's kind of like that camaraderie, and you almost see it more like in old school movies, right? Where a guy would just, go up to his homie and just, like give him a big ass hug and just be like, "Hey, what's up, bro?" Tap on the chest whatever. And I feel like nowadays it becomes so cold. It's almost like because that people just don't know how to interact, especially men. Which is why, you know what? No, I'll make sure, I give out at least 10 hugs today. So
Awesome. Yeah.
you hear that,
That's true.
guys? Make sure you hug your homie today. On that note, Pradeep, it was honestly, I had a blast talking to you, man. I got to have you on again to talk about more, go more in depth on certain things, man. But dude, I had an absolute blast, bro. So thank you for coming on the show, and I look forward to speaking with you again, man. Any other closing words?
No, I just appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I had a great conversation, and I love your vibe. I love your energy, man. So keep it up. That's awesome.
Hey, no problem, man. Till the next one, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.